Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
So we're closing in on 1 million subscribers, give or take. Math's not really my thing. With at the Pointless Exercise newsletter at pointlessexercise.com. So if you haven't subscribed, swing on by and sign up for the newsletter. Love to have you. And this is Remember This Crap podcast, but there's a whole lot of podcasts on this Pointless Exercise Podcast Network. There's also the Movie Deep Dive podcast with Mike Pusateri. We just did Rounders. We've got another special treat coming up for you here in the next couple of days. And there's a Cub Pod with Sam Fells, Kyle Reichert, and myself. And you think, what, have you guys given up on it? No, we haven't. Also going to be a brand new Cubs podcast coming up soon. So sign up for the newsletter and subscribe to the podcast.
Going to see another one. Cody Ross, left field. That one's deep. That one's over. Ball game! Rock off! Cody Ross, just like that. Back to back. Oh, in Chicago, they love to call it back-to-back jacks. Guess what? Back-to-back jacks. Harris takes off and a fly ball to right. And Bradley plays it off to the side, and he doesn't know how many outs there are. He just throws the ball into the bleachers. That's only the second out of the inning. And that allows... Not only Puntos was going to score either way on a sac fly, but it allows Harris to go all the way to the third. And it's now 6-3. So a sacrifice fly for Mauer. And a mental error by Milton Bradley.
Boy, when it goes bad, it goes bad.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise Podcast. It's time to remember this crap with Mike Donahue. Mike, how are you doing?
Andy, to be honest, I'm a little verklempt, and before we get started, I'd like to issue a mea culpa, a retraction, an apology of a grave, embarrassing factual error that I made that I have to own up to. It was brought to my attention last week, so need to get it out of the way. Multiple times, not only in this podcast, but possibly others, I had been perpetrating or propagating the fake news that Sammy Sosa, one Samuel Peralta Sosa, had never hit a grand slam at Wrigley Field. And Twitter user Brian Bennett, after we had done our last podcast covering the 2001 Cubs, pointed out to my astonishment, my astonished disbelief at first, that in one of his final games, in fact, as a Cub, Sammy actually did hit a grand slam, and it just knocked me for a loop because that's, you and I have talked before. I'm happy to be corrected. I know a lot of minutia, a lot of tiny details about many things that happened many years ago, but I also know some things I can misremember, and I'm happy to have it set straight. But something like this was just too much for me to reconcile. So I've had to come to peace with the fact that I have some sort of a black hole that I don't know what was more troubling, that I do not have a memory of him finally doing it, because I was already aware of the fact that he had never done it up until that point, or that he did it. And somehow suppressed that fact because it interrupted my narrative that Sammy Sosa had never hit a grand slam at Wrigley Field, which is sort of used to point out that the fans at Wrigley can sometimes be a little bit self-absorbed to the detriment of the players. But and I think to that end, there's still some justification because he didn't hit this granny, and it was his third to final home run as a Cub at Wrigley Field. But the fact remains, and I apologize for anyone who has now lost their faith in me and my ability to remember, and all the children out there. I now know for a fact that Sammy did do it once. I'll just have to modify that, but I needed to come clean because that was too big of that was too colossal of a mistake, and so just want to own up to it and move on.
Well, you'll have to wear the hair shirt for this podcast to make
it's on,
and we'll see if we get Sammy on a future podcast, and you can apologize directly to the real Mr. 606.
Maybe the wheel will spin on 2004, and I can give Sammy his due. Actually, no, I don't want to talk.
We could do celebrity remember this crap, and we'll just bring in. Sammy won't remember any of it. Okay, so this is the fourth edition of the Cub version of Remember This Crap, and we have done 1992, 1997, and 2001.
Which, like I was saying before the show, Andy, it's sort of, we talk about this, I try to break it down into the overarching 32 years, which is almost 95% Tribune owned. And I spend a lot of time sort of making a distinction between, this first era of the Tribune Company, which we haven't talked about because the wheel hasn't landed on it, and this 15-year end, basically, which I, was consistently using this word that you're probably getting sick of, but I've come up with it and I think it fits. It's mediocrity by design. And it just so happens that this concept of just leveraging the ballpark and fielding a team with enough, noticeable talent, but really, not tanking, but just designed to be mediocre. And the three true outcomes have been revealed in each of the three spins. All three of them occurred in a 10-year period that were all fall under this umbrella. In 1997, it was what happens when you design this, mediocre team and things go sideways and you have a terrible season. And then in 92, it was drawn up to perfection. We covered that. And then last time we did 2001, which same principle, same blueprint, and things went right, at least early on, and they almost made the playoffs. So I guess as far as that tableau is concerned, in the future, if the wheel falls on any of those years, we'll already sort of have the archetype in place because those are pretty much how any of those seasons ended, one of those three fashions.
So are you at all concerned that Jed, Tom, and Crane have heard your theory and think, wow, that's a really good idea, and they're just going to execute it now?
You brought that up a couple of episodes that's where we're kind of back to, except they've gone so far. One of the underpinnings to this sort of blueprint between 1992 and 2006, the sort of Andy McPhail, if you want to put a face on it, you would not run off Anthony Rizzo. You would actually, whether it was Rhino, a fading Rhino, or Grace or Sosa, you would hang on to that. That was your ticket to ensure that people were still coming to the games if you did happen to fall out of the race in July. So yeah, they're not even doing that right. Go figure.
Well, we'll see. I still have a hunch he's the one they're going to keep.
It has to be.
But I don't know. They should have signed him last month, and they didn't do it.
It's such a no-brainer. It's just on so many levels. So you really wonder.
Okay, so we're going to spin the wheel of crap, and the only rule we have is that we won't talk about the year before or the year after the season we did last time. So you will not, if you've tuned in hoping to hear about the 2000 or the 2002 Cubs, I hate to disappoint you. You're not going to get that this week.
Go find another podcast.
Those are a couple of buttes.
Oh, God.
No. So I'm actually kind of glad we don't have to worry about them. So now we're going to spin it and see where we end up. Getting a little herky-jerky. Oh, it's going to be recent.
Oh, no.
2009.
Oh, no.
Okay, we're going to put you're better The farther back we go, the better you are. We're going to have to put you to the test, though.
And before I'm not stalling to come up with facts. I'm just going to tell you, and I mentioned this, I think, on the show, and I've mentioned it to you, that I actually have a little bit of a dark hole in these last few years, and I thought about brushing up, and I haven't, just to maybe reacquaint myself. And the reason is because after over, I guess, almost 30 years of being a Cub fan, from 79 to 2008, when a 98-win juggernaut was just summarily swept out of the playoffs for the second season in a row, and they couldn't field the ball, and they couldn't throw strikes. It broke me. The 2008 Cubs broke me. I was able to ride out some of these crappy seasons, 81, 86, 97, for such a little return, and went to the precipice in 84 and 03. And after 08, I didn't do it consciously. Like, I didn't give up my season tickets. I still went to games. But it fades more and more. I'm glad we got 2009 and maybe not 2010, 11, because I can tell you right off the bat, the 2009 introducing Milton Bradley to the Cub outfield. That was a lot of fun. Also in 2009, the Cubs did not finish 500. And in 2009, did Kerry Wood come back? No, I think he did not. So I see, I'm struggling. This is really, this is actually post. Careful what you wish for, because this is post sort of Tribune 2. This is actually the sort of post Sam Zellish era. And I don't know. You're going to be driving this one, buddy. I mean, I'm ready to pitch in, and I'll start looking some stuff up. But I know this is only 3 facts. 2009 Cubs. Bad.
They were there. They did finish above 500.
Oh, that's right.
In fact, they finished in second place.
See, I'm going to readjust.
Milton Bradley got released in Busch Stadium, and when Henry told the team, they cheered. It was the year. It was not Kerry Wood's return, because they had just traded him to the Indians. Is that right?
That's right. But Mark DeRosa was gone too, right? Did he also go to the Indians?
Yes. Actually, Kerry left free agency, signed with the Indians. DeRosa got traded to the Indians.
And was rewarded for like booting a grounder in the playoffs and rolling into a double play the year before, and just being a decent but not great player by getting a standing ovation the entire 3-game weekend series when the Tribe came back. He did.
This would have been Lou Piniella's final full season with the Cubs. This season, we'll have to get into this in great detail. This season is most remembered for the dramatic way they fell out of first place. Not unlike last time, where where Preston Wilson hit a home run in Miami. The Cubs had a 1-run lead going into the 9th inning against the Marlins, and Kevin Gregg gave up the tying and losing home runs on back-to-back pitches. And Cody Ross hit one of them.
I remember Cody Ross now.
It
took that long for me to.
But there are a lot of great. There's the greatest backup catcher. I mean, other than Hank White.
Numero uno.
But
Hank White.
At least the backup catcher with the greatest middle name of all time was on this team. Coy Dolan Hill.
Oh, that's right. With his
Frankenhand.
And that was after he had survived the incident, because I want to say that your buddy Coy Dolan Hill made his debut in the 2007 Cubs. I would not have guessed that he was still hanging around. No disrespect to Coy Hill, but he was part of that sort of like, once they realized that Michael Barrett was brain dead. I don't know if it was before or after Carlos Zambrano punched him repeatedly in the dugout, but they had that rotating list, that rotation of catchers that season. Bowen was one of them, and before they settled on a broken down and old but still superior Jason Kendall. So, but Coy was still kicking around in 2009, huh? Good for him.
He was. He was like a bad penny.
I couldn't even guess. Oh, I know the starting catcher would have been the reigning Rookie of the Year.
Yes,
correct.
Giovanni Soto.
So what did the immediate beginning of the decline of Giovanni Soto's career look like in 2009? I wonder, because he was Rookie of the Year.
He did exactly what you expect Cub Rookies of the Year to do in year two. He hit 218 with a 321 on base, 381 slug, 11 homers, 47 RBIs.
And still managed to outperform Jerome Walton's 1990 season, I'm sure.
Yes. So the 09 Cubs spent, how many days were they in first place? They were only in first place for 11 days. The last was Wednesday, August 6th.
Okay.
And I'm positive when I look up Thursday, August 6th, it's going to be Kevin Gregg. The biggest lead they ever had, they didn't exactly luxuriate in first place. The biggest lead they ever had was a half a game. So all those other days they were tied, it sounds like.
Wow.
They were 11 and a half games back on September 9th, so that was good.
Yep.
Longest winning streak was only 5 games. The longest losing streak was 8.
Okay.
They were 46 and 34 at Wrigley, 37 and 44 on the road. They got hot in July, went 18 and 9. Were decent in September. They didn't do much else. They did play 16 extra inning games. They won 9 of them. So.
Okay.
Don't know the significance of any of that. All right, so we're going to go right now to, let's see, what happened in August the 5th. No, that wasn't that day.
Well, we're in search of the backbreaking Kevin Gregg game, which
it's right here.
Admittedly, only faintly familiar. When you said Cody Ross, though, then I remember. But it shows you how emotionally detached I was to this team. That I do remember now. They did finish over 500, and that was the first time in our lifetime they'd finished over 500 in 3 consecutive seasons, which probably makes Piniella the winningest manager in our lifetime before Joe.
Well, he had 3 straight winning seasons, which was unheard of.
Yeah, like I just said, for the first time in all of our lifetimes. So I had forgotten that, but now, I was aware of that. I think I immediately flinched when the season came up, but it was a winning season. But it just kind of felt that, I don't know. Like I said, I was probably already emotionally detached, but I don't remember really any pennant fever, even though they were in first place in August. It just, I was just dispirited after 2008. But it was not a horrible team.
There was a fever, a tangible fever. It may have been. It was, what would it have been? It was COVID-09.
That's it. COVID-09.
Okay, so Sunday, August 2nd, they played in beautiful Land Shark Stadium, the stadium that changes its name every 2 years, whether it needs to or not. The Cubs were tied for first. And the pitching matchup was it was a former Cub against a soon-to-be former Cub. Ricky Nolasco pitched for the Marlins.
Okay.
I'm
glad it wasn't another former Cub that went to the Marlins, because I don't even want to invoke his name. And that's all I'm going to say.
Against Ryan Dempster. So a former Marlin against a former Cub.
My guy.
Your guy, Ryan Dempster.
Yeah, who probably was still having a decent season. He's coming off his career year as a starter, I want to say, in 2008, which abruptly ended in the playoffs. But I don't think Dempster really regret. He was a good pitcher for a few years in the rotation, and they still had Zambrano. But so Dempster starts this game with this
crucial game against the Marlins. The Marlins were also. They basically had the same. Well, the Cubs were 55 and 48. The Marlins were 55 and 50. So it was basically the same. And the Marlins lineup that day was full of future Cubs.
In 2009, huh?
Yes, a lot of them, including my favorite member of the 2016 World Series champs. Who do you think was playing left field?
Chris Coughlin,
Chris Coughlin was leading off and playing left field.
May have been in his Rookie of the Year season, perhaps, or maybe. He was defending because that was Gio. Okay.
He was hitting 259 that year. Yes, it was. That was his Rookie of the Year season.
Wow. So, man, we were watching it was like a futures game. You had the reigning and eventual Rookie of the Year.
He was hitting. Listen, is this right? He was hitting 259 on August the 2nd. He finished the season 321. I mean, he was clearly blistering hot.
Well, he must have not got many at bats the first half of the season, I bet. Huh? It's one way to
could have been
the
if he
Rookie
was
of the Year.
Loading up, if he could raise his average that much. 60
Right.
points.
Look at it. Yeah, he had to have been. He probably got called up halfway through.
He was Rookie of the Year that year, and he finished 28th in the MVP race.
Wow. Cogs.
The shortstop on that team, you'll never guess this because I wouldn't have thought of him as a shortstop, was a future utility player for the Cubs with a great name.
Emilio Bonifacio?
Yes, that's right. Emilio Bonifacio.
That just came to me. I didn't think I'd get that. Opening day leadoff hitter in 2014, I think.
The catcher that day has a day named after him with the Cubs because he was the
Domingo.
He was the what did he do? He was the winning pitcher and got the winning hit in a game as a position player. Is that what he did?
The catcher, right?
Yes, catcher.
He's on Twitter. He's like a Cub Twitter-friendly Twitterer. John Baker.
John Baker. He was the catcher that day.
John Baker, walk-off maker. Okay, another future Cub. Wow.
And then a guy who came in to pinch hit was also a pinch hitter for the Cubs and the White Sox, both. Ross Glode.
I remember Ross Glode. I remember thinking when Brant Brown got called up because he was a left-handed hitter and he was actually playing first base. This is way back in 1996. It's like, oh, he kind of looks like a Mark Grace. It was way of a poor man's version of Mark Grace. And then when Ross Glode came around, I'm like, oh, he's like a poor man's Brant Brown. He looked like the same type of hitter. And he may have played first base. I think actually Ross Glode may have been a former Cub as of this game. I could be wrong.
Probably.
That's yeah. He actually enjoyed a little bit of success with the White Sox. I think as coming off the bench or whatever. So, do you think Jim Henry was really checked out at this point? He's just like sitting in the box watching the Marlins. Actually, before I go to, I wanted to just put this sort of within that framework, that sort of historical context. This is the first season that's not really falling under this sort of Tribune 2. This is still Tribune ownership, but it's this weird period, a 3-year period after beginning in 2007 when they were still the Tribune Company, but the Tribune Company was owned by Sam Zell. And so this whole mediocrity by design was scrapped. And for the first time since Jim Fry signed Dave Smith and George Bell and those busters in 1991, you'll remember the Cubs were never big players in the free in 1991 and until Alfonso Soriano was signed in 2007, which sort of fit with their approach. So it's Tribune ownership, but what it is this season is sort of like the downside of sort of this burst, this sort of, they had some young talent that they weren't paying a ton for at the corners in Ramirez and Lee, but they went out and they got Soriano, they got Fukudome, they spent because Zell, he was not interested in winning. He was just, his thinking was, let's blow up the franchise of this so I can sell it to some idiots from Nebraska, perhaps. I don't know. But so that's what we have in this season, and they were over 500. They weren't horrible. They were in first place in August. The fact that I don't remember it says more about how I was crushed after 2008 and really was kind of gone until Theo was hired. But this is actually, and I want to say this is probably the last year of the Tribune actual ownership. I think the Ricketts purchased the team the last year, but it's the downside. If you look at the Cubs roster, they're, some not bad players, but they were already it was just sort of sad and post-apocalyptic, and they didn't have anything to show for it. They didn't even win a single playoff game in that sort of burst of the previous 2 seasons.
So you're right that, I'm sure when we get to 2007, we get into this in great detail, but John McDonough is actually the one who signed Alfonso Soriano. He basically took over the negotiations. And,
the carnival barker had his. All right, John, you got 1 year.
He did a much better job when he was the guy who just went out and signed Marian Hossa. But he signed same playbook. He signed Alfonso Soriano. So they spent in 07 and 08, and then basically told Henry, "Okay, we're done. You need if you're exactly the way the Ricketts are doing it right now. If you want to add any money, you've got to dump some first, which is why they traded. They felt like they needed left-handed hitting. Dave Kaplan tells the story about being in the hotel in Los Angeles after they got swept out of the 08 playoffs, and Henry and Piniella and some other coaches are sitting in the hotel bar drinking, and Lou is bitching about how they didn't have any left-handed hitting, and that was the reason why they couldn't. And so Henry was under orders from his manager to go find him a left-handed bat, but in order to do that, the Tribune was insistent that he did dump payroll to add payroll, and they made obviously the horrible decision to bring in a psychopath, literally a psychopath, Milton Bradley, to come play that year. So the austerity had started, and it was really showing because, the biggest thing you have, it's what the 2021 Cubs are suffering from, is you end up with a complete lack of depth. Because as you start to shuttle away, you start to let your good players go, and you don't have good young players to backfill, you end up with journeymen and duds all over your lineup. And here they are in August, pretending they're in the playoff race, and here are the first 4 batters of the game for the Cubs. Sam Fuld is playing
first
center
place
field.
Cubs, right?
The first place Cubs.
On August 2nd.
Yes.
Okay.
Sam Fuld in center field. Ryan Theriot at shortstop. Derek Lee at first base.
All right.
And I'm going to make you guess this. Since you weren't paying attention, there's no way. But who do you think? Aramis is hurt. This was the year of all that horrible hamstring and quad injuries when Bob Brenly was convinced that he was just dogging it all the time. So Aramis is not in the lineup. And who do you think is playing third base for the first place Cubs on August 2nd?
Third base, Jesus.
And he's batting cleanup in this lineup.
DeRosa's gone. Oh, and the way you talk about it wouldn't have been DeRosa anyway. I'm not even going to guess because I'm already in a black hole of 2009. Am I even going to know the guy?
Do you remember Jake Fox?
Yes, but I associated more like 2005 for some reason. I think he started coming up in 05. We had high hopes, didn't we, Andy, for Jake Fox? I know on the message board there was some chatter.
Well, he was hitting 308 with a 347 on base and a 607 slugging at the time.
Oh, and
he also didn't know if a baseball on defense. He didn't know if it was stuffed, wound, or inflated.
Right. Yeah. You say he was third base?
He's playing third base. Oh, Jake played everywhere.
Even when he was called up, he
was a catcher.
Beefy kid. He was a catcher, a first baseman, and maybe they put him in left field. Third. Wow.
In 2009, Jake Fox played third base, left field, first base, catcher, DH, and right field. And none of them well. So I just read off what his stats were. Let's say he didn't finish strong because he finished 259, 311 on base, 468 slugging. His OPS dropped 200 points in the last two
from that game
of the season.
Onward.
Yeah. I cut them short because the fifth place hitter, a hot young Cub prospect,
Felix PA.
No.
But he already washed out by then.
This is a guy who, if you stood him next to Brian LaHare, you wouldn't be able to tell which one was which. Do you remember Micah Hoffpauir?
Oh, of course I do. I remember Micah getting the old September call-up when the Cubs had already lapped the field in the previous season in 2008. Want to say he may have hit a grand slam in Shea Stadium or he did something, but yeah. Big Micah Hoffpauir. Yep. I do.
So he's playing right. Soriano's in left. Not playing well at all. 249, 315, 447. So they got him batting.
Tough year for Fonzie.
Sixth. The other half of the Cajun connection is playing second base.
Fontenot.
Mike Fontenot. Coy Dolan Hill is your catcher. I'm sure he's the personal catcher to Ryan Dempster.
Did they replace? Right? Did they replace DeRosa with Fontenot? Did they? Would they have done that? Did they do that? Is that a thing that happened? Because DeRosa was their second baseman, and obviously a very serviceable one until the postseason.
I believe Fontenot played the most games at second base for that team, which is.
And it might have been the design too going into the year.
Well, it would get you another left-handed bat, which they seem to really think they need.
That's right.
Yeah, he played 135 games for the Cubs that year.
Yeah, given the choice, I would prefer him over Terrio because Terrio was annoying, but yeah, it's just kind of very Hendry-ish that we had both of them. I mean, it's like they're put them on top of each other, but Vincent Adultman at left field.
But I was going to say that Lou had it was a one-run game, but Lou used his bench liberally in this one. Milton Bradley pinch hit. Okay, do you remember this guy? This was a guy who, according to our buddy Mike Brott from Higher Gymnasium, had to go on the disabled list because he burned his butt lighting a fart in the clubhouse. Do you remember who that was?
Was it Angel Pagan?
It was not. This was a former Brave.
I remember Mike talking about this, but it's lost to the sands of time in my memory.
Jeff Baker,
home run maker. It once hit a game.
Jeff obviously came in for defense for Jake.
He did once hit a game tying homer off the bearded Brian Wilson one of those years that effectively kind of knocked San Francisco out. So I have a Cub memory of a Cub doing something to another team, but it's probably my only Jeff Baker memory.
Also pinch hitting late in the game, or I shouldn't say late in the game, but pinch hitting. Kosuke Fukudome, who then went to play right field. Kosuke's numbers look good, 270, 385, 441. But by then, Lou had pretty much lost all faith in Kosuke.
I think he lost faith in Kosuke down the stretch the previous year. The blue fell off the rose pretty quickly.
In fact, he complained. If part of the commiserating in that bar was that he had made the decision that Kosuke was overmatched by all Dodger pitching, and he wasn't going to start him in right field, and then he did in game 3.
But he batted him 8th and batted Terrio 2nd. I remember that. I mean, it was bad. And Fukudome did struggle down the stretch, if I remember correctly. In 08, I mean, obviously you're not going to get off to a hotter start than a game-tying, home opening day, but he just seemed to sort of level off and just continue on a downward trend. And Lou didn't show any confidence in him, and we were all kind of disappointed. But yeah, it's interesting. You point out his numbers. How long did Kosuke end up staying with the Cubs? Because I want to say he was there another year, probably at least 2010. And I bet you, now that I think about it, his numbers probably weren't horrible. He wasn't really a bust like Milton Bradley. So the Cubs Cubs released. Go ahead.
Kosuke was launched during the 2011 season, so he was there.
So 3+ years.
3.5 years. He also went to the Indians, who were busy picking up any scraps the Cubs would drop, and then he finished his American career. In 2012, do you remember who he played for after the Indians? The last team he played for. The only other team he ever played for.
Was it a National League club? Did he ever come back to Wrigley?
He came back to Wrigley, but with an American League team.
Oh, with who? Just tell me.
The Chicago White Sox.
Oh, see, I don't even remember that. You said 2012. Okay, I was just coming back in 2012 because that was the first year of Epstein. I knew, and I was yeah.
Kosuke was born in 1977 in Sogun, Japan. Not Shogun. Sogun, Japan. What year do you think he retired from Japanese baseball?
Born in 77 and finished. What was his last year?
Last year in the States was 2012
with the Sox. Okay,
he also had to
35. Play. I'm going to say it sounds like he just must have probably just retired in the last couple of years. So
what 41? If I told you he's still playing?
Oh yeah, that's what I was first going to say because I'm like, it's not inconceivable.
He is a Chunichi Dragon.
So I wonder where he ranks on any all-time counting stat. Well, he wasted too many years in the States, but if he'd never left, he'd probably be.
Oh, I don't know.
In contention
he has played 18
seasons
maybe? In the Nippon baseball, non-professional baseball (NPB). He has played 18 seasons.
Is that the same league that Ichiro made his mark in?
Yes.
Would you know? So I wonder, he might have more hits than Ichiro in the Japanese league, only because Ichiro spent so much of his time in the States.
Well, I can look Ichiro up quick. He has 1,915 hits
In the Japanese league.
in the Japanese league. Career 289 hitter, 381 on base, 491 slug. He's been a part-time player since not that long. He played 100. He had 418 at bats in 109 games in 2019. So yeah, he's only recently become a bench guy.
Okay.
He had 281 home runs in Japan. 76 stolen bases. Scored 1,000 runs.
So, do they have a Japanese Hall of Fame?
I'm sure they do, and he'll be in it.
He'll be in it for sure.
He also was he was an international star for Japan. In fact, that's where he first. Plus the fact that his name on the back of his jersey reads "Fuck you, do me."
Exactly.
Or the "Fuck you dome," which is
I like "Fuck you, do me" because it's concise. It's multiple sentences.
Once we all saw that, it's like, oh, this is our new favorite player.
Right. If the stat didn't appeal to us to begin with, we got that level of sophomore humor thrown into the mix.
So Ichiro, for his career, his professional career, 4,367 hits
combined between.
He's my hit king.
Fuck you, Pete Rose.
My ass. 41.91 or whatever.
41.91, I think.
4,367.
Yeah.
3,089 of those in the big leagues.
And coming over, what was he? Probably 27 or so, I think maybe.
No, Ichiro was.
Was he a lot younger?
Oh, you're right, 27. Yep.
That was just a guess.
I was scrolling up, I was like, oh, he's going to be a lot younger than that. No, 27. So he played till he was 45. Although those were a couple of token at bats.
Yeah, I got, it was a pleasure to see Ichiro.
His last 2 years were 17 games in 2 years.
I did get to see him in person. It was long after his star had faded, but I can say that I saw Ichiro. He pitch hit for the Marlins in a game that I was at in 2017, and I actually think he struck out. So I should look it up. But if he did, it would actually be a unique event because that guy was kind of a freak.
I believe the only time I ever saw him play was in the 2002 All-Star game in Milwaukee. And I know I saw him play there. I remember watching him take batting practice, and it was one of the most ridiculous things you ever saw. He literally hit the ball from during his first round. He's batting left-handed, obviously, and he hits the first ball on a line just inside the third base line. Uh-huh. His next swing, a line drive about 10 feet to the right of that. His next swing, 10 feet to the right of that.
He's literally just spraying the infield.
The next one, right over the middle. He just did it. He literally, if they had put a chalk line on it, he would have lined the field perfectly all the way around.
Building a baseball spider web.
Wow. Anything cooler than that was one time watching Edgar Martinez take batting practice before a game with the weighted donut on his bat. He took a round of BP with the donut on the bat, his first round.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And was ripping the ball all over the place. And then
did the ball by chance ever hit the donut and take a funny bounce or anything?
I think he probably could make sure it didn't do that.
For a franchise that is one of the few franchises that actually have a more woeful postseason career than the Chicago White Sox, the Mariners have gotten to see some really great individual talent.
Yeah, they've had incredible superstars.
Edgar, Ichiro, and Jr., and then to throw in the mix one of the most dominant left-handed pitchers in history.
Well, and they also had a 19-year-old win a batting title. A-Rod.
That's right. They had A-Rod, too, although, he left for greener pastures, and he was still pretty young. But
A-Rod was great. Well, obviously, he was great for a long time, but he was a superstar when he was there. It wasn't just more recent.
I mentioned that I saw A-Rod in 1994 for Appleton, and subsequent to that, I was cleaning out. I wasn't cleaning out. I was reorganizing our crawl space, and I've got this box of crap that you might have one that's similar, and it's got, among other things, old newspapers and ticket stubs and all this, and a stack that was a lot larger than I remember of mostly Cubs programs, scorecards. But I
you
made
tweeted out a picture of that, right, with them all arranged.
I did. I actually laid them all out as best as I could in chronological. But one that wasn't in the picture was the Kane County scorecard, and in that game, I know we're not talking 1994, but that's going to be a brutal year, so I'll be happy to do it again. But I remember seeing A-Rod, and he didn't do anything. He went with my dad. I was living in DeKalb, right? I headed out to Geneva. My dad just came down from Elk Grove. A-Rod, in this game, he got a hit in his last at-bat, but it was his fifth trip to the plate. He had walked, but he was otherwise 0 for 3, so he went 1 for 4. And he also made an error, but it didn't matter. It was just funny because the guy was a man-child, right? And baseball's a funny game anyway. It's why it makes it hard to scout sometimes, because you could play one position, the ball never gets hit to you. You might not get anything to hit. And he did not do anything special, but just the way the dude walked around, he was huge. He had a presence about him. And it was only a year later. What was he, 20 or 9? You said he won a batting title at 19. Was that 1996? Because he was on he was on that unlikely Seattle playoff team that supposedly saved the Mariners for Seattle, and that was in 95, and I saw him in 94.
That was his first, the end of that season was his first taste of the big leagues. Lou liked him so much he made them put him on the postseason roster.
That's right. Jesus, and he was not even 20.
Yeah, I was wrong. He was his 20-year-old season.
Incredible, though. So that was probably 1996. Did he win the batting title the very next year, or maybe 97?
No, he won the batting title his first full season. He must not have qualified for rookie of the year. He played 17 games in 94, 48 in 95.
So he actually got called up the year I saw him in A-ball in Geneva, Illinois. He ended up on the Mariners that season.
He hit. He was 11 for 54 with 2 homers. But in 1996, his first full season in the big leagues, A-Rod led the American League in runs with 141, doubles with 54, total bases 379, and he batted 358. He was an all-star. He won the Silver Slugger, and he was runner-up in the MVP to, I don't know, Juan Gonzalez.
Okay. And
Juan had A-Rod had 36 homers, 123 RBIs in his first full season.
And this was long before we discovered how weird he was, so he was actually really likable. It was a great story.
You thought, oh my God, this guy's awesome. Yeah, and
he was perfect, right? Hollywood good looks. He's smooth, and he's a goddamn incredible ball player. And he was.
It's so frustrating that he did what he did, because he took steroids. He didn't need them. He just did. And he's an asshole. It's going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame.
Is it?
I think. Although it shouldn't. Because if you pull up his baseball reference page, and anything you lead the league in, they bold type.
Yeah,
this freaking thing is full of bold.
Is it? Is it really?
Yes, it's ridiculous.
You're right. The black ink is such a perfect visual indicator, baseball reference, which is why if you want to laugh, look at Harold Baines. You'll have to search for the black ink.
He led the league in ground into double plays, I'm sure.
No. I don't know if they chronicle that. I think he had sack flies, maybe, or intentional walks. I can't remember, but yeah, you see a lot of black ink. You don't really have to make the argument. I mean, you can get into that steroid debate. I tend to sort of just waive it because a lot of it was relative. But the other reason, aside from that whole slippery slope of a discussion, is the fact that the guy just works his ass off. He sucks at it, but he's very visible. Right? That's always sort of been, Joe Morgan sort of did that to perfection and got in on the first ballot. Ron Santo tried and failed, but that was always the formula: is get in the media, keep yourself present, and you'll get in. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you become the greatest radio analyst of all time, which Ron clearly was.
Sure.
A lot of,
well, hey, you know what? They let Hawk Harrelson in as a broadcaster, so I guess the thought of Santo, getting in that way isn't so ridiculous.
But at least they didn't. At least they voted him in as a player. I know that he probably would have never gotten in had he not done his 20 years in the GN booth. But
his shtick. Yeah.
Okay, so we interrupt. Remember this Mariner to get back to August 2nd. 2000.
Do we have right? Okay, the day the 2009 Cubs fell out of first place, their single season long high of one half game in first place.
So it's like we said, it's Ricky Nolasco, Cub star, former Cub prospect, against the great Ryan Dempster, and they're both dealing. It's scoreless going into the top of the third when Dempster leads off with a strikeout. Sam Fuld walks. Ryan Theriot singles. Ground ball through weak third base. So I'm sure he hit the shit out of that. It had a hit probability of -4%. I don't know if that's possible.
This adds up. It checks out.
And then Derek Lee singles to center. Scores Fuld. Jake Fox strikes out, and Mike Hoffpauir grounds out. But so the Cubs have a 1-0 lead, and Ryan Dempster, he's just going to make that stand up. So he pitches scoreless baseball.
Oh, he didn't give it right back by walking the first 4 hitters the next inning?
He goes, it's South Florida in August. What do you think the temperature was at the beginning of this Sunday afternoon game?
96?
90 degrees. So
90. That was a little high, but
Dempster goes 6 innings, 6 shutout innings, and he hands the ball over to a one-time Met phenom, Aaron Heileman.
Oh, Notre Dame, a Golden Domer, correct?
Yes, that is true. He strikes out Dan Uggla to start off the 7th, and then he gives up a home run to Cody Ross, so we're tied.
Can I just stop for a minute? You mentioned Dan Uggla. You mentioned Mike Broad earlier, Bad Kermit. One of the funniest observations. I think it was on a podcast with you from back then. Were you guys doing a podcast in 2000? I think you were.
Yeah. We've been podcasting forever.
2009 marks a decade of podcasting for you, so kudos. But Mike said one of the funniest things that I ever remember hearing in the context of baseball was that Dan Uggla, what did he say? He said if he was like if you took the legs of Ron Say, the face of Corey. No.
Corey Hart?
Yeah, I'm
I'm
screwing up the joke. No, never mind. But it was something like, it included the legs of Ron Say, the torso of another player. I ruined it, and you can cut it, or I can remember it later and tweet it. But it did involve Dan, who I think he had short arms. That was really the big thing, short arms. No, he said, here it was. Corey Hart's face, Dan Uggla's arms, Ron Say's legs. This might be problematic. You'd have the perfect midget ball player. Sorry.
Little people. They prefer little people.
I know, but this was 2009.
Very sensitive to little people on the
I apologize.
Podcast, so we apologize. So Heilman gives it up, and now we're tied. Dempster's not going to get the win. Boo-hoo-hoo. But he gets through the 7th, only allows that run.
Good for him.
In the 8th, Lou heads out, and that way he doesn't head out. He just brings in a new pitcher, and this was a Cub prospect that Steve Stone once predicted was going to win the Cy Young someday.
Jesus.
He was a starter who could never hack it as a starter, mostly because of physical injuries.
A Cubs prospect in 2009?
No, Cub prospect from before. This was him kind of hanging on in the big leagues.
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank.
You remember Angel Guzman?
Oh, yeah, I do. Come on. Angel Guzman was still pitching for the Cubs in 2000. Was he not on our radar like in 2003? Am I misremembering? Was he not like one of these guys? Whoa, when Maddox retires or Clement moves on, we're gonna just put Angel Guzman in there.
I believe that was part of the plan.
Jeez, it's funny to think of like all of the players that we had like genuinely high hopes for. Fucking idiots.
Let's see, Angel Guzman.
He may have had some burst of effectiveness. I bet if you were to like really take a deep dive into his stats, because I think he did have good stuff. I don't think he was just hype.
I know he doesn't say in here when they signed him, but he made his debut in 2006. He was 24. I know that he had made like a big splash in spring training, maybe in 04 or 05. And so we're like, oh, here he comes. And then he never
there you have it.
came.
Mm-hmm.
2009 was his final season in the big leagues. He pitched in 55 games. He had a 2.95 ERA. He only gave up 41 hits in 61 innings.
He was good.
So clearly he got hurt again.
Yeah, he must have, because he was pitching well for not a good team. Sorry, but
They finished second place.
They finished in second, and they didn't probably get eliminated till mid-September, I'm guessing. All right, and this does not feel like one of those teams like we talked about the 2001 Cubs last week. They felt legitimately in it. I mean, again, I'm jaded here. I probably shouldn't offer too much of my own personal observation because I don't really have too much. Some of these things come back to me. I still, it was still incidental to my following, but it doesn't feel. I don't think of 2009 when I think of a team that broke my heart and faded out of the playoffs like the 2001 Cubs.
So now we get to the Angel goes 1-2-3. Gets rid of he sets down Emilio Bonifacio, Nick Johnson, and Jorge Cantu. And the Cubs are off.
Sorry, cannot. Yeah. That was my favorite Jorge Cantu joke when he was a player.
So we're tied going to the ninth. Barrel-chested reliever, former Angel Brenda Donnelly comes in to try to keep it tied.
Yep, it's a 1-1 game.
But he is no match for Jake Fox, who on the first pitch he throws,
Jake Fox goes yard,
hits a home run to deep left to put the Cubs up 2-1. They're gonna hang on to sole possession of first place. This is
Jake Fox
super
is going
exciting.
to ride. He's going to drive us to the playoffs.
Lou gets on the phone, calls down to the bullpen, and who is he warming up to close this one out?
I couldn't even. Eric Gregg, right? No, it's the eighth inning.
Eric Gregg might have been preferable. No, this is the ninth, top of the ninth.
Okay.
Home run. So all you got to do now, set him down the bottom of the ninth. You win the game. Yes, Kevin Gregg gets up.
Kevin Gregg. Sorry.
Milton Bradley is up next. He flies out. Soriano strikes out. Fontenot walks. Coy Hill strikes out. So the Cubs aren't able to tack on any insurance runs.
They're going to regret that.
Pat Hughes doesn't get to do a read. He's very disappointed.
Yep.
But the Cubs have the lead, and I'm going to look it up here. Their win expectancy is 82%, going into the bottom of the ninth with a 1-run lead.
I think they originally would have had 90%, and they did a double take and looked at Kevin Gregg's sport goggles, and then immediately lowered it to 82. Sorry, maybe that's
the first batter for the Marlins in the ninth, future batting champion Hanley Ramirez. Kevin Gregg says, pfft, and Hanley pops out to third.
Okay.
Win expectancy now 89%. You could taste it.
Mm-hmm.
He falls behind Dan Uggla, and on a 3-1 pitch,
midget arms,
Dan Uggla cranks one to deep left to tie the game.
I'm vaguely remembering this now.
Fireworks go off.
It was Uggla.
Marlins are jumping up and down. All 29,000 fans, of which there probably were 12,000 still there. Very excited.
That's what we get for making fun of Uggla and his midget arms.
Don't even give the firework guy time to reload, because on the next pitch, Cody Ross hits a home run to the exact same fucking spot.
I totally remember that now. I do. I was emotionally disinterested, but of course, like Al Pacino and Godfather 3, I know I was at this point pulled back in because Cody Ross definitely rings a bell. He became a World Series hero for the Giants a few years after that, because I remember watching that World Series and I remember that fucking guy. I didn't know why I remembered him, but now I do.
So the Cubs lose, a heartbreaker. They have to go to Cincinnati
on Monday.
But, oh God, I almost forgot about this guy.
I know you're talking about, because I'm looking at it now.
Randy Wells. If you need a stopper, the guy who's going to do it for you is Randy Wells. He's not going to let this turn into a losing streak.
And you're right, he did.
He wins.
The name that jumps out to me is not the winning pitcher in that game, is the losing pitcher for the Reds.
Yes.
The eternally mouth-breathing
Aaron Harang.
And a bit of a Cub killer maybe for a short period of time. I mean, he was not a bad pitcher. He looked like he would, be working for like Aramark, like underneath the stands, but he apparently, I think he was good for a little while, and he seemed pretty tough on the Cubs. So kudos to Randy Wells being the stopper, gets them right back on track, right?
And that's not even enough. The next day, Tom Gorzolani beats the Reds. The Cubs are still tied for first. So I've kind of missed.
Well, they went back into first thanks to Randy Arms. So they fell. Yeah,
they fell a half game out, and they were back. They were tied. So now you're going to go for the sweep with Rich Harden, and that's not going to happen. And that loss, they lost 4-0 to whoever was it. Jim Lair from the McNeil Lair Hour. Is that the guy who beat him? Justin Lair, former Brewer.
Well, don't the Cubs have a history, especially like maybe in games when they're trying to make it to the playoffs, where some unknown, I mean, maybe a lot of teams feel this way, comes up out of nowhere and just baffles them. I can't even think of another example offhand, but it feels like a thing.
So they get shut out on Wednesday the 5th, and then they proceed to lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of their next 9. And that's pretty much
that was it. Yeah, I was inured. I don't remember any of that, and I'm glad now. But looks like Jason Hamill, future Cub Jason Hamill, beat the Cubs in one of those games. He beat Randy Wells on Wells' next start. Yeah, that seems to have done it. What are they, 4.5 out back? They never got closer. Just sort of faded. So I don't know. Maybe I just don't have enough stored in my own memory about this team, and upon further review, maybe they are sort of technically. I think we were spoiled with we'd had some good teams then, just angry when they didn't do anything. But I don't know. Looking at this now, having reviewed it, I don't know how you can say that the 2009 Cubs were not in contention. I just don't really. It doesn't really jump out for me for reasons I've already stated. So also points out how wrong I was to say that they were a bad team. They really weren't bad, but they weren't really that good. But they were in contention till mid-August. I mean, you make it past July, and if you're in first place, right? Are there cases when that's not the case? If there is, maybe this is one. But it was, and no matter what, it was basically the window shutting. This was it until Theo came, as far as any hope.
So, yeah, it was a very strange season, almost from the beginning. Milton Bradley,
because they had Milton fucking Bradley in the clubhouse from the beginning.
So Milton got hurt on the road trip to open.
I want to say the first time he reached base, it was in the Astrodome, right?
Yeah.
And I think he finally got on base. Like, I think maybe I'm wrong. Again, I should maybe not dabble in this season, which I've admittedly
remember this crap, not research.
Right. Help edify me. Because I think he got off a little bit of a slow start, but I want to say it was like he finally got on base with a hit or something. And then he was like, I pulled my hamstring.
Well, but what I remember now, I'm frantically trying to look this up, was I'm pretty sure he pinch hit the first game he finally played at Wrigley. He pinch hit and got thrown out of the game during the at-bat. But I could be wrong here.
Shouldn't be hard if that part of your memory is true, then it shouldn't be hard to nail it, because you just find. Well, would have been an opening day, like his first game.
No, I just looked up opening day. He didn't play. The home opener, he didn't play.
Okay, and he
so I believe it was because he was still injured. So I'm going to just look at his game log here real quick. His first home game it was in the second game of a doubleheader against. That can't be right. It was against the Cardinals on April 16th. They weren't playing doubleheaders that early. And he did have one at bat. He struck out. Maybe he got thrown out after the at bat. It would have just been perfect for him to have been tossed during it.
Yep.
But I'm almost positive that it probably was. I'm sure he got rung up on a pitch he didn't agree with, and then he got tossed. But that kind of set the tone. You also remember that was his only season with the Cubs. He had a game where he caught a fly ball and thought there were 3 outs and turned and threw the ball into the stands.
Can I just tell you that when you say 2009 Cubs, and you gave me, I failed tonight on my 5 fast facts because I couldn't even think of 5 things about the team.
Well, you thought of 3, and 2 of them were right, so that's good.
That's right, because the Cubs weren't bad. But I believe the first thing I uttered was Milton Bradley, and because the very first thing I think about with Milton Bradley is because we were in Lake Geneva with my family. We were up in like Lake Delavan, Wisconsin. We had a cottage. We were in a bar watching that game, and I remember I think it was a Friday after. I'm pretty sure it was a Friday afternoon game because we were all on like vacation, and he caught a fly ball in the right field. So it was like even when he like thought he was doing something that would ingratiate himself with the fans, he was completely fucked it up because it was the second out of the inning. He thought it was the third. He thought the inning was over, and he throws the ball into the stands. I want to say it was an interleague game against the Twins, but I might be wrong. It would have been in August. And then you may also recall, Andy, it was at Sox Park, right, during an interleague game where he had a very public shouting match with Piniella.
Well, the Cubs always seem to the Lou Piniella Cubs always melted down in the dugout in Comiskey. They had Lou got into it with Carlos Zambrano in the dugout one year. He got into it with Milton. They had the
Zambrano Barrett in 07, right? That was in the dugout.
That was at Wrigley.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. That's right. You're talking about the Sox Park. Right?
Yeah, but still, it was a very tumultuous time with the Cubs. But I do remember they had at least two incidents in the visitors' dugout at Comiskey, in the park they barely played in, and they would melt down over there, which was just real enjoyable.
Yeah,
for nobody.
Yeah. Okay,
so Milton Bradley had a very checkered career. He was a hot shot prospect.
He was Expos.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We had him on our minor league. I had a team with Oleg, a rotisserie team with some guys in DeKalb that so geeky that we have minor league players, and we had Bradley even before he had gotten called up. So I knew he was with the Expos.
And he got traded.
And let's not even get into the fact that obviously for most Americans of a certain age, probably like over 20, I mean, like Milton Bradley, like who names their son Milton?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe he wasn't necessarily set up to be on the right course for emotional stability. I don't know.
Well, a red flag for Milton, or for any player really, would be that when you have a good year and then a team says, all right, you can go now. So his best season for the Indians, because he got traded for Zach Day, and he went to the Indians in 2001.
From the Expos?
Yes.
God, I vaguely remember Zach Day. That's funny. All right.
2003, Milton hits .321 with a .923 OPS. He's a legit. He's a really good hitter. I mean, it's only he also always got hurt. So it always
he was fragile. Yes.
And then they said, "Hey Milton, that's awesome. How'd you like to go play for the Dodgers?" So they traded him and Franklin Gutierrez.
Okay.
For Andrew Brown. Shouldn't that be kind of a move?
Right.
Okay, we've got this really good young player. Can we get Andrew Brown for him? Sure. All right, you can have it. Enjoy Milton. He's a lot of fun.
Deal.
Plays 2 years for the Dodgers in 2005. He hits .290 with a .350 on base of .484. And the Dodgers call up the A's, and they're like, can we have Andre Ethier? So like, sure. No problem.
That's a pretty good deal. Ethier, I mean, in retrospect, I dare say. I mean, aside from the lopsidedness of the trade based on a team's eagerness to trade Milton Bradley, but
2007, he plays one full season for the A's. He pitched pretty well, .818 OPS. The next year,
he's a classic Moneyball player, really. I mean, he had a high on base and stuff. You'd think he'd fit in there.
The next year, he gets traded to the Padres, and in the middle of a big game for the Padres, he gets called out on a check swing third. No, it was a close play at first base. He turns and he's arguing with the umpire at first base, and the first base coach is trying to keep him from bumping into the ump and getting thrown out. Milton tears his ACL. Out for the rest of the season.
I remember that now.
So the Padres are like, no thanks. He signs as a free agent with the Rangers in 2008. And he leads the American League in on-base percentage, 436, and has nearly 1,000 OPS, 999 OPS.
Unreal.
So the Cubs are like, he's an all-star, the only time he's ever an all-star, and he's finished 17th in the MVP voting. And so the Cubs need a left-handed hitter, and they're like, this is our guy. He's a free agent because no one will sign him for more than 1 year. Jim Hendry flies out to wherever he lives, Seattle, I think. Maybe that's where Milton lives. Flies out to needs to see him eye to eye, face to face. Going to get a true measure of the man.
That's right.
And he says, this Milton, this is a hell of a guy. You're the guy we need to play right field for us. And they sign him, and they had a very similar meeting later in that season, where Jim told Milton, "Go the fuck home, and don't ever come back."
Well, was he? Henry was probably the first guy to not give him a 1-year deal. Was he not signed for a multi-year deal or what? Do you know offhand? I'll look it up because he was like a big free agent signing. So I just ordinarily assume, that means that.
He had to have
multi-year.
Yes, he had to have at least had a 2-year deal because he got traded to the Mariners for. It was basically, hey, we've got a bad contract.
Jose Silva. I know. Even though I was checked out, I know that
Close.
Carlos Silva. He went, and he was horrible. And he went 4-0 in his first 4 starts.
They're like, we really got something. We just pulled off Henry's done it again. This is Eric Karros and Mark Grudzielanek all over again.
Grudzielanek and Karros.
And it wasn't.
Yeah, no, not to be.
Yes. So the 2009 Cubs, a real fun bunch. Do you remember? This is always my favorite part. We're just going to go through and look at some of the guys who played on the team. Another great. So you asked a question, and I don't know why I didn't think of this. When they got rid of Mark DeRosa, was the idea, we've got Mike Fontenot, he's going to take over. No, that was not the idea. They signed another hot free agent, a fat little second baseman from the St. Louis Cardinals, and he's going to play second base.
Aaron Miles?
And do you remember what Aaron Miles did for the Cubs? If you close your eyes and wish, it's exactly what Eric Sogard is doing for the Cubs right now.
Yeah. And also Chris Steins in 2002. Let's sure to mention that. Yeah, basically just corkscrew himself into the ground at home plate and then leave. Right? There's a role. I mean, maybe we should come up with a term for that type of a.
Aaron Miles played 74 games for the Cubs in 2009. He hit 185 with a 224 on base and a 242 slug, a 466 OPS. His OPS plus, remember 100, his league average was 20.
So their idea was some sort of a Fontenot Miles platoon, perhaps hoping to get away with trying to play them at the same time on top of each other.
If you had him do that, you'd have a normal sized
collectively.
Yeah, Miles was a switch hitter, so in theory you could have done that. Now he had played. Right. He was a former White Sox draft pick, I believe. Is that right? No, he was. That's right. Oh, he was back. He was. I forgot. He was an Astro draft pick. Do you remember the story about when they were in the minor leagues? Aaron Miles and Morgan Ensberg got held hostage in their hotel room. Yeah,
I always was under the impression that those goofs were trying to buy weed and they met up with the wrong people. Maybe I'm wrong.
They were.
They
invited
hostage.
Trouble and they got it.
Because they're like, these guys are dumb as fuck and they got a lot of money. Let's leverage this.
So Miles played for the Rockies and then he went to play for the Cardinals. And in 2008, he had a Milton Bradley over his season. He had 317, 355 on base. So the Cubs are like,
the
Cardinals. Now the Cardinals are like, just go away, which is not a good sign. Except they couldn't quite quit him. Because he came back to the Cardinals in 2010. He had 281.
Of course.
In 139.
He's a classic Cardinal, Aaron Miles.
I almost forgot about that little guy. Actually, who he reminds me of, White Sox fans are going to love this.
Yeah, I mean,
Aaron Miles is Nick Madrigal. Their current,
Yeah.
I can only hit. I can hit I can hit ground balls to the opposite field, but I never strike out. That's great until then either somebody hits the ball to you and you have to field it,
right,
or you come up in a spot where somebody needs to hit one in the gap, and you don't have that club in your bag.
That description reminds me of another Sox player that we may have to mention when we talk about the 1999 Cubs, and it's Mike Caruso. You might remember. Yeah. Little slap hitter that managed to go bat 300 one year somehow.
Well, the Mike Caruso thing gives me the willies because, well, actually, the current Cubs aren't going to have to do a white flag trade because you'd have to get into the pennant race to be in a white flag trade. But the Caruso famously came to the Sox in that trade.
Yep. Roberto Hernandez, Danny Darwin.
So now one of the great things about having Aaron Miles and Mike Fontenot playing second base for your team is that you're going to need a lot of second basemen during the season. And when I mention substitute teaching utility infielders, who comes to mind?
I can't remember.
Bobby Scales. Bobby Scales played on the 2009.
Good Bobby Scales.
Yeah.
Was it that long ago that Bobby Scales was trying to make a story for himself as the 31-year-old rookie, right? Was that kind of – we were all pulling for Bobby Scales. Like he was on nobody's prospects radar, maybe at one point briefly, but he's a lifer. Oh, fond memories. Good old Bobby Scales.
Yeah, he was exactly that. He was a 31-year-old rookie who played in 51 games for the Cubs that year, hit .242. Seemed like a hell of a nice guy. Not a very good player.
Nope.
And on the team because the Cubs had a dearth of talent, and so they needed.
Yeah. Like you said, man, like no depth. It's like when you use this sort of a model, right, where you're not tanking. You have players that have value, and of course, that game that we focused on in August, Ramirez was out, but they had Lee, they had Ramirez, they still had Soriano. But they didn't have depth. It was like top loaded. They didn't have an idea. Henry was still around, probably woke up every day going, I can't believe I'm still employed. It was just, like I said, I think this is the last year of official Tribune ownership that we're covering here. So, it went out with a whimper. Came in with a bang, but it was on the heels of a team that we had high hopes for that won the collective 175 games for over 2 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, the 2008 Cubs really seemed like a legitimately good team.
Yeah, they won 98 games. There was 97. I think they surpassed the 84 Cubs won 96 games. I think the 98 Cubs surpassed it by 1. And this team, like you said, and I had to be edified because I assumed they were bad, and they weren't. Not only is it obviously the first time in our lives that they had 3 consecutive 500-plus seasons. Up until the Theo era, it's probably the most wins they've had in a 3-year period. This is the last year of that run. In fact, I'd be willing to bet without even the benefit of looking it up that was the most wins they'd had in a 3-year period in our life.
So speaking of utility infielders, the Cubs had a guy who had played for the Reds. He was one of those little Johnny Tryhards.
I already mentioned Chris Steins. He was 7 years earlier.
It's not Chris Steins. It's the other guy.
Ryan Friel? Was he a Cub?
Yes.
Did he kill himself?
He did.
Sorry, not to just
shot himself in the head 3 years later.
Yes. He had a invisible friend named Farney
who lived in his mouth.
It was not Kyle Farnsworth.
Farney lived in his mouth, and so everybody thought that was adorable, and it turned out it was just an outward sign of mental illness.
Right. It's sad.
Yes. Tyler Colvin played on the 2009 Cubs.
Is this the year that he almost got stabbed in the heart trying to score?
I believe that was 2000. I think that was 2010.
Bat.
I think Mike Quaddy had to come out and pull the bat out of his chest and save his life. Pretty sure.
Right. He had to sort of.
It could have been because it was Wellington Castillo, and Wellington was not on.
Right. No, I remember this.
Cubs.
Quaddy had actually put his head on Colvin's chest at such an angle that the sun would bounce off it and like burn off the bottom of the shard of wood that was impaled in poor Tyler's lung. Tyler, I believe, was eventually traded by Theo for Ian Stewart, right? not one of Theo's finest moments, but it's not like it bit him in the ass. Colvin was a first-round pick, too, the year before Josh Vitters, I think, in 07. But he was already up in 09, so I think he was a college player. We had high hopes, again, briefly.
Yeah, you kind of buried the lead about the – it's true that there were Tyler Colvin and Ian Stewart were involved in a trade. They're probably not the two guys the trade is best remembered for. It's also not Casey Weathers, who the Cubs got from the Rockies. It would be future batting champion DJ LeMahieu that people probably remember that trade for.
I'm sorry. Yeah, right. That's actually a misfire by me. That's really how that should be remembered. You're right.
Okay, so now the Cubs also had a speedy little outfielder on this team for a little while.
You already mentioned Sam Fold.
Yeah, this is even better. This is a guy who I think he's probably best known for jumping over a car.
Oh, I was going to say Tony Campana, but now it's Joey Gathright.
Joey Gathright played 20 games for the 2009 Cubs. He jumped over a car the long way, not like Blake Griffin jumping over a Kia to dunk. Joey went the long way over the car.
He went from the rear bumper over to the front hood, right? I would guarantee
went from the boot to the bonnet, as they would say in England.
And for kids that want to be amused, Gaithright is spelled Gaithright. If you just Google Joey Gaithright car jump, I'm pretty sure it'll take you.
That's what the internet is for Joey Gathright jumping over.
And I misspelled his name like an idiot.
No
G-A-T, not G.
Just
no
Gathright.
That's right.
And so then another guy played 6 games for this team. He is one of Pat Hughes' favorite opponents. He played for the Cardinals for a long time. Japanese outfielder. Do you remember? He just loved his name.
He did, because Pat's into like the sort of the linguistic novelties of players' names. Like, Mark Loretta and Mark Grace, their last names are like women's first names. But of course, Andy, you are talking about a guy who once hit a 600-foot homer off of Kyle Farnsworth, believe it or not, So Taguchi.
That's So Taguchi.
Yep. Right. Should have had his own TV show.
The Cubs managed to win without a lot of quality starting pitching. Although they did have 4 starting pitchers.
Have we not mentioned Big Z at all tonight?
Not yet.
I don't think we've mentioned him. We mentioned him in previous casts, but he was still going.
They had 4 starting pitchers who had ERAs under 4. They were Ryan Dempster,
of course,
Theodore Roosevelt Lilly.
He was still okay.
12 wins for the Cubs. Carlos Zambrano, in 28 starts, had a 3.77, but only went 9-7. Randy Wells, 12 games for the Cubs, 3.05 ERA.
Right. So this was the one Randy, because I remember like Randy Wells kept going out there like he's not that good, and then he'd have a good game. Then he goes out there the next time like he's not that good, he'd have a good game, and so like nothing about him really reeked like he'd be good, but he had a really good year in 2009. And then I remember, all right, now you put your hope into Randy Wells in 2010, 2011, and then it was like, oh, that's the guy that I kept thinking that we were having before he just had a career year. So good for Randy. I don't know if he got anything out of that, like a multi-year deal or anything, but
I think he got a truck.
He might have gotten a truck.
He got enough money to buy a pickup. That's all he ever really wanted. That's right. We'll talk more about this next guy in the 2008 pod, because he was the Cubs' answer to the CC Sabathia trade. The Cubs traded Eric Patterson and some other great players for Rich Harden. They also traded Josh Donaldson.
Right, and for Dumpster Boy. Now, a little unfair to rail on them for Donaldson, although again, it's so Jim Hendry to draft a guy that low, fall ass backwards into him. He would not have developed in the Hendry system, I would have to imagine.
Well, wasn't he still a catcher for the Cubs?
He was. He was not. He was he was kind of like one of those guys that the Cubs got for you, right? He might turn into a great player.
For me?
Right?
Oh, for you, Darby.
Why you?
Did I get traded?
But it's a long way away, and in this case, it turned out Josh Donaldson developed into a great player. But there's a butterfly effect. You don't know if that's how it would have worked out with the Cubs. And obviously, when we're looking at this time frame,
they were just Fox.
He was not, or a Micah Hoffpauir.
We got Jake Fox. We got Josh Donaldson. Well, clearly, we're going to keep Jake Fox.
I'm still stunned that because I know Jay Fox. I know he was on the 2005 Cubs. If I'm wrong, it's not as bad as misfiring on Sammy Sosa. But if that's true, then it's just funny that he was still hanging around in 2009. Just tantalizing the powers that be with his potential.
But so Rich Harden was the guy they got in that trade, who was a super talented pitcher, who just was never healthy. On the rare days when he was healthy, no one could hit him. It just didn't happen often enough.
He was so fragile that it took him like 9 pitches to retire. He'd get like 10 strikeouts a game and give up 1 hit and 2 walks, and he'd be at 100 pitches at 5 innings. That's my recollection of Rich Harden. It was not a bad trade at the time, and they were going for it. Again, Henry still had that light. It was like, as you correctly pointed out, Andy, that it was after the season when they reeled him in, but they were spending freely, and Harden was an established pitcher. And Josh Donaldson's future prospects aside, the Cubs were not giving up a lot to get him.
So I got to give Lou credit for winning 84 games with the bullpen that they gave him. Considering he didn't have they didn't have good pitching, really. Kevin Gregg was a closer. They're two, the relievers he used the most, he used Aaron Heilman 70 times, but Sean Marshall pitched 55 games for the Cubs. And Carlos Marmol, who had just had 2 of the most ridiculously good seasons relievers ever had, he hadn't gone full Marmol yet. He was still good. He just wasn't as dominant. Because he used to put, the 2 seasons previous, he put up ridiculous strikeout numbers. This year he struck out 93 in 74 innings, which is good. I mean, that's really good for a reliever, but it's not like the numbers he was. But he walked 65 in 74 innings.
Because they stopped chasing that perfectly placed pitch that
nobody hit him. But if you just didn't swing, you had a decent chance of still getting on first.
And did you say Aaron Heilman had 70 innings pitched or 70 appearances?
70 appearances.
I mean, that alone is just, not that I need it, just more evidence that I was checked out, because I never would have guessed that Heilman pitched that much for the Cubs. And also, once again, I'm wrong. Not as embarrassingly as Sammy Sosa. Jake Fox did not debut until 2007, not 2005, but still.
Jeff Samardzija pitched 20 games for them. He had pitched the year before with a really good ERA, and I think he may have made the team out of spring training, and they realized he was not really ready.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that they put. First of all, Samardzija was, catching passes at Notre Dame in 2005, and then chose baseball over football. But he got called up as a reliever in some like high pressure games in August and September. Again, the Cubs ran away with the division, but it's not over till it's over. And I remember he pitched in some high leverage situations and did well, and then sort of they kind of stashed him again. I mean, it would be another 5 years before he was an opening day starter, I want to say, in 2014.
Other guys who pitched out of the bullpen. Remember John Grabo?
Yeah, I do. It came from Pittsburgh in the Gorzolani deal, right? There was a trade that we were excited. Cubs got Gorzolani. I don't know who they traded. That must have been the year before. Like, it wasn't as big as the Harden, Chad, Godin trade. But I want to say they picked up Gorzolani and that what's his nuts the year before. And he came back the next year.
They got him this year in 2009. They got John Grabo, who was the guy that I think they really were trading for, and Tom Gorzolani for Jose Ascanio.
I vaguely remember him. He's
Kevin
a pitcher,
Hart,
right?
Remember Kevin Hart, not the diminutive comedian.
No, Kevin Hart was going to drink the blood of the non-believers if Apex was to be believed back in the DeCipio days.
And future All-Star, with an asterisk, Josh Harrison. He was an All-Star because Mike Matheny decided that when the games counted, he needed a utility player on the All-Star team one year. Pick Josh Harrison.
Kind of a Ron Coomer All-Star, is that what you're saying?
Moron, yeah. So yeah, that's a bad... one of Tom Gorzolani's comps, closest players, Bob Ochinko.
I remember Bob Ochinko.
That name would have gotten Ron Santo suspended.
That's right, or Harry Carey.
Yeah. Same with Kike Hernandez. It's a good thing Kike wasn't around.
Yeah. I always regretted the fact that Harry Carey died before having the opportunity to pronounce Hideo Nomo's name, Nadeo Homo.
Yeah, that's
but never
pretty
happened.
sure
Here
that would have happened.
He had a few chances, but it just never came out. So.
Former White Sox Neil Kotz was in the bullpen, pitched 19 games for the
heart. Yeah, the heartthrob
with his World Series ring dangling
off
of his finger, probably while he's pitching.
I hate to admit this because it acknowledges the Sox won the World Series, but Neil Kotz is the answer to a trivia question. He is the only Sox pitcher that did not start a game but pitched for them in the ALCS against the Angels.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't know. I literally didn't watch any of their playoff games.
Like Packers playoff game?
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't help. I was rooting against them, and all I did was agitate myself.
Yeah, I just said, nope, I don't need to see it, and I don't.
Especially when on this historic run, which I had to appreciate in some level, that it wasn't even like old school pitchers from the 50s. It was like old school pitching from 2000 or 1908. Like, what? You had 4 complete games, and the other guy went 8 1/3?
So you're going to like this. Jake Fox wasn't the only Fox who played for the Cubs that year.
I know. Chad. I remember Chad Fox, right?
Yeah,
Didn't we have high hopes that Chad Fox might be able to step into the closer's role maybe in 2009? Maybe
we
not.
did, and he did, and then his arm fell off.
Oh, that's too bad.
Actually, the Cubs first got him in 2005, and he was pitching high leverage innings for the 2005 Cubs, very much like the 2009 Cubs, a team that was better than you think, but still wasn't very good.
Right. Actually, I find a lot of analogies because 2005, like 2009, was sort of after the bloom had fallen off, right? Because 2005 was they go 5 outs in the World Series in 2003. They don't get eliminated till the end in heartbreaking fashion in 2004. And then 2005, that team did not finish 500. I remember hoping they wouldn't because Dusty so wanted them to finish 500 to be the first team to win, to finish 500 3 straight years. But very similar to the 2009 team where, again, 2007, 2008, the Cubs have a little bit of an ascension. They're in the playoffs. They get knocked out, but you're still hopeful. And then it never felt like that. So it's a good observation. 2009 Cubs very analogous to 2005.
The 05 Cubs were they got close, 79 and 83, and it broke a streak of 9 seasons in a row where Dusty's teams had finished over 500. He's only ever
at that point I was so mad at Dusty.
Yeah, he's had more than you think, but not very many. I mean, Dusty obviously has.
His first year he won 100 games,
103 games, and didn't make the playoffs.
Missed the playoffs.
Then he had 3 straight losing seasons after that with the Giants, but then 1, 2, 3, 4.
And then he got knocked out by the Marlins for the first time in '97, and then
he had 7 straight winning ones. Always a good sign when you manage your team to the World Series, your contract's up, and the team goes, that's probably enough. Felipe Lou wants your gig. We're just going to hire Felipe. We know you were, 4 outs away that time, I think, from winning the World Series. But now that we were done,
yes.
But you have a very huge. You have a lot of back taxes you need to pay, or they're going to put the cuffs on you. So you just take a 4-year deal with the Cubs.
Take as much as you can.
And basically, at your press conference, tell everybody that's why he took it. Well, I talked to Don Baylor about whether or not you guys were racist, and he didn't say that he said maybe. But I needed the money, so I took the job. So here I am. Everybody excited? Okay, great.
So I thought we could introduce a new feature since we're in baseball season, like whatever year we pull up, like do an on this day. But there was no Cubs game in 2009 on April 20th. In fact, it must have been a rain out, right? But I just happened to notice a name, a losing pitcher on the opposition on April 26th for the Cardinals, and I'm just going to ask you what this guy's nickname was to see if you can remember. He came up as a Cub. Kind of alongside the other John Lester, who spelled his name like the English people do, Leicestr. Yeah, the Iceman. But the losing pitcher in this game, in which the aforementioned Rich Harden won.
I already know who the pitcher is, and there's a pretty good chance that we know where he was on January 6th. We have a pretty good chance, I think, we know where this guy was.
Can you tell me what you remember his nickname maybe being?
I remember that he didn't have a neck. I think that's part of it, right?
Yes. No, the nickname was Shoulders.
Shoulders. He should have just been Shrug. That's what his nickname should have been. I think he did that seriously because Wellmeyer is such a long last name. I think he did it so that his name fell nice on his back. I think he just said, "Well, if I hunch like this, that looks nice."
And so you're saying Todd Wellmeyer likely stormed the Capitol?
Didn't Todd Wellmeyer? Now we should save this for a Todd Wellmeyer season.
Yeah, because he was not on the 2009 Cubs. He pitched against them.
Didn't he hit an extra innings home run against the Brewers?
He was the winning pitcher in the game in which Corey Patterson homered off a former Cubs outfielder, Brooks Kieschnick, and got 3. And it was his major league debut, and he struck out the side on all 3 batters.
See, I remember that. Because Corey Patterson home run seems so fluky to me. I assumed Todd Wellmeyer hit the home run. No. I knew it was a complete fluke. It wasn't that.
Right. It would have been like Jim Bullinger, like homering in his major league debut, except it was his. He was doing what he was paid to do, and he actually struck out the side on. But yeah, Patterson. Just to bring everything full circle, because we tend to do that every week. I think you said that the sub name of the podcast should be inadvertently. That Brooks Kieschnick was on the mound. I think that just sums it all up because he's been mentioned as a former Cubs bust, and Corey Patterson homers off him, and Todd Wellmeyer strikes out the side, gets a save, and then Cubs beat Wellmeyer in the current 2009 season, and then Wellmeyer's in jail for storming the Capitol. So it's all full circle.
So baseball's best fans, because Wellmeyer went on to pitch for the Cardinals. Baseball's best fans got Todd a little irritated. Kind of during the aftermath of George Floyd. Todd basically tweeted a few things that were not terribly sensitive, and they
good to know.
Retweeted them, and then he threw a fit.
All right, so just so you know, while I was talking and rambling, I had Todd Wellmeyer's baseball reference page on. I just noticed that Baseball Reference, they've made a lot of changes lately. One is that they will include a former or current player's Twitter handle if he's on Twitter, and in which case I clicked on Todd Wellmeyer's and see that I am blocked. I didn't even know he was on Twitter.
There you go. Ooh, I wonder if
I am not blocked. Like, I'm a pain in the ass. I'm a gadfly. I'm annoying. I'm an ass. I'm like, hiding behind my keyboard. But I'm not blocked by a lot of people. John Cass, Paul Sullivan did block me, but then he unblocked me. Julie DeCaro. There's not that many, honestly. And but Todd Wellmeyer is part of that select group, and I didn't even know he was on Twitter. So he somehow managed to pre-block me.
I'm not blocked by Todd. I can.
You're not?
I can enjoy.
How are you not?
I can enjoy all the Todd Miller tweets.
How are you not? I've got like 205. Whatever. I don't care.
So his most recent tweet is it's a picture of a stenciled sign. It says, "America is not divided by race, color, gender, or sexual orientation. America is divided into wise people and fools divide themselves by race, color, gender, or sexual orientation."
So wise.
So,
well,
thank you, Todd. Really means a lot. Whatever your gibberish.
Had I not known I had been blocked by Todd, I could have been following him and been exposed to such nuggets.
I wonder when he got blocked.
I don't know.
Were you mean to him while he was still playing?
I never interacted with him. I wasn't following him. I got preemptively blocked. Right shoulders. Whatever, dude.
Well, those are the best.
Yeah, well. Yeah, we'll have more of that. He wasn't even on the 2009 Cubs, but,
Well, a lot happened in a season that, for most of it, was... All the memorable stuff was bad. For a team that
Cody Ross.
A team that was okay.
Milton Bradley.
I don't remember any of these big wins. Just remember,
right.
Yeah,
right. Chip was long gone, but Len just going like the 2007 Cubs are struggle, but they squeaked in. But there's always and we'll give it plenty of airtime. The Aramis Ramirez homer against Milwaukee. Yeah, what positive things do you remember about this? It's got to be the most forgettable. We talked about the 2001 Cubs being the best bad team, so I don't know. This might be one of the worst good teams. I don't know. Were they better than the 2001 Cubs? They both missed the playoffs.
Not with that pitching. I think we didn't talk about, though. They finished second place. They only won 84 games. I mean, that's not.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a team that had won 97. So they were on the decline. Or I don't know how many they won the year before, but And it was everything was coming to a close, whether or not I was following them as much as I used to or not. And I made it clear that I wasn't, but the Ricketts moved in next year. That'll be fun. I'll have to brush up when we do those seasons. And then, then it's onto the Theo era, which we're still processing, but it was this weird 3-year period of Tribune ownership that does not fit that Dallas Green era or that Andy McPhail era. But it was Tribune owned, but it was, a team that was on the tail end of their best 3-year run in their lifetime. Sad as that sounds.
Yeah, the Cubs finished they won 83 games, not 84. They won 83 games. They finished a cool 7.5 behind the Cardinals, who went 91 and 71. They missed a wild card spot by 5 games. The Giants were 88 and 74. They were the second.
So they were technically alive in mid-September.
Technically, yes.
I mean, yeah. I was sure to insert that.
I remember that for the Cardinals lost. So DeRosa goes to the Indians, but then ends up on the Cardinals because he gets traded at the trade deadline. And
that's right.
The Cardinals played one of the great games ever in Dodger Stadium history. It was a game where Matt Holliday got hit in the nuts with a fly ball.
In the playoffs. It wasn't the nuts, it was like the tip. It was
and DeRosa, I used to have a GIF of this. I'll see if I can find it. DeRosa fielded a ball and threw it. So last week, Javi, on a ground ball to short, completely missed the grip and threw it 3/4 of the way up the screen behind first base.
Oh, I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it was a beauty. DeRosa did that in a playoff game, except there was no screen. He just chucked it into the stands at Dodger Stadium.
Two bases from
the Cardinals got swept by the Dodgers that year, which was fine by me.
Yeah.
And actually, 2009, to bring it around, this is what we do. 2009, who was the World Series MVP for the Yankees?
2009, they beat the Phillies. Phillies are trying to repeat in 2009. Joe Girardi's only World Series win for the Yankees, and their MVP was it? You can't tell me who.
It was Alex Rodriguez.
Oh, it does bring it full circle. Well, there you go.
It's like the one good playoff series he had for them.
He was due. He was
getting a lot of shit from everybody.
It would have been nice if we could have Cubs eras where they could certain players could be afforded the opportunity to cycle through that. Right? It's like we're talking about the 2009 Cubs. Some of our favorite Cubs of that era, like Aramis Ramirez. He's my favorite probably of this particular era. He has the worst numbers in the playoffs, but he only had 6 games. Heaven forbid they made the playoffs. Yeah. I'm sorry. He was on the 03 team too and hit a grand slam off of Dontrell, although I don't think he had a great series then. But, over time, if you get the play, and we've seen it with our guys in the recent run, but of course they all kind of established their moments early, but they still, had a lot of opportunity. Be nice if we get,
Well, it's a chicken and egg thing. It's, you don't get a lot of games to rack up stats, but also if you don't play well, your team doesn't get very many. If the big guys don't hit early in series don't last very long, and that's the 07-08 Cubs know that, and so do the from 2018 on Cubs, where they actually from the NLCS in 2017 on, they haven't hit in a playoff series.
Correct, 100%.
Miserable. And honestly, even that series against they didn't really hit very well against the Nats. They didn't hit against the Nats. They won 9. They won that crazy game 9-8 in Game 5. I mean, they had to have a catcher's interference and an error, and there's all kinds of crazy shit.
They struggled. You're right. They didn't exactly just knock the ball around. They never hit like they did in 2015. Actually, that was their best. At least that series against the Cardinals. So I guess I can't complain. But even in 2016, they went cold for a few spells and then had just enough time left.
Honestly, if you want to get really honest about it, this incarnation of the Cubs, the best Cubs teams we've ever seen, they really only hit in the playoffs. They scored 4 runs in the wild card game against the Pirates. They really hit well against the Cardinals in
the whole series outside of Game 1.
Didn't hit at all against the Mets.
Against the Mets,
fucking
right?
Thing.
Right. A little hot and cold against the Giants. Yes. Let's be honest.
They went completely to sleep against the Dodgers until
and same with the Indians
until Zobrist hit that double.
Yeah. He got a bunt. No, he got a bunt hit.
That's right.
Zobrist
and then
bunt hit,
Rizzo used Caesar's bat, and Russell wore his underwear. And the same thing in the World Series, and Bryant hit the homer off of Bauer that sort of lightened the load, and even then they had to sweat it out, and they didn't exactly. So you're right. Like there weren't that many games in which they just clubbed the Cardinal series. What makes that Cardinal series glorious, because they just took 3 straight games by clubbing the hell out of them. Yeah. But that's pretty much kind of it, really. And for a while, I was like, well, hey, baseball's hard. A lot of teams are like that. But no, it may be a little bit unique to the Cubs, I think, in that instance, because teams don't go that cold. Yeah, baseball's hard. You go through stretches, but you're right. Since even that Washington series was suspect, Now, part of it, obviously, in the Washington series is if you're going to get Strasburg and Scherzer, not going to hit very well. Because the Mets that year, that was the only healthy year they got out of like Harvey and Syndergaard and those
DeGrom
guys.
Pitch,
So when you get to the playoffs, you're going to face great pitching. That's just how it works.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
The good teams are going to hit it, at least enough to win, and the Cubs haven't done that for a long time.
Yeah. And the 2009 Cubs didn't get that chance, unfortunately.
No, it's too bad, because when you look at that juggernaut lineup they could have put out there. I mean, think about going to the playoffs. Think about the other team, like, holy shit, how are we going to stop Sam Fuld, Mike Fontenot, Micah Hoffpauir?
Just that
Jake
lineup.
Fox. How do you pitch to Jake Fox? The only way to pitch to Jake Fox, you throw 4 outside and you try to pick him off first base. That's the only way you can get Jake Fox out.
No doubt. But you pulled the signature game from that season, and
it's because it gives me nightmares.
No, but like it's a perfect representation of what you're saying, because it was August. They were technically legitimately in it. They were right around first base, and they field this lineup that, and I know Ramirez was hurt, but like Fontenot and Fuld and Jake Fox. I mean, you just mentioned the names. So, I mean, that just screams paper tiger. I mean, it's
they were in it, but were they really in it? And clearly all it took was the Cardinals put together a decent stretch in the end of August, and it was over. So.
Yeah, well, farewell, 2009 Cubs.
All right, well, we'll spin the wheel again next time, and maybe we'll finally hit the 80s.
I know. I think we'll have a blast. I don't even care if it's 1986, which is a miserable season. I'll just be so happy to just talk about some of these clowns from my youth, because we've spent 3+ decades cultivating over our minds. So we'll see. Well, we don't control it though. We're going to talk about.
Well, we're going to get to them all eventually.
Wherever the wheel goes.
Just our luck. The last like 6 will be 1981, 1982, 1983. It's like we won't even be able to avoid them, because we won't have enough left.
But our self-imposed rule mitigates against that a little. At least I know that next week I'm not going to have to talk about the 2010 Cubs. So, but there is the fear of 2011. So I may have to brush up so I'm not so caught off guard. We'll see.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out that next time.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Andy.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Many of us have herpes.